Captain Mara Duval stood on the bridge of the Artemis, eyes fixed on the starfield beyond the panoramic viewport. The endless black was dotted with distant sun's pinpricks of light that seemed almost indifferent to the solitude of her ship. Every mission in Sector C-17 had been unimaginative. Chart a few gas pockets, map minor gravitational anomalies, log isolated comet tails. But this morning, as the Artemis coasted between two unremarkable binary stars, something unprecedented flickered across the sensor grid. Lieutenant Rua Vance, seated at the nav console to her right, frowned at the holo display. "Captain, I'm picking up an encrypted subspace transmission. It's resonating on frequency 42, but layered under a scrambling key centuries-old back when translation protocols were still analog." Mara's pulse quickened at the mention of analog. That meant it wasn't a modern distress call shrouded through transponders or a pirate beacon. It was a primal scream from a past nobody alive today had witnessed. "Run a decryption matrix," she ordered, voice calm despite the surge of excitement in her veins. "Overlay it with every archival key we have. Let's see who's calling and why." As Vance's fingers danced over the console, the bridge lights dimmed to ease the flicker of the decoding streams. The Artemis's engines settled into a quiet hum, the kind that makes the ship feel almost sentient. Over the speakers came a crackle of static, then multiple voices, alien cadences interwoven across dozens of tongues, many extinct or unregistered, in galactic lexicons, but all intoned the same desperate plea: "Save us before they return." The words echoed, organic yet haunted. Harmonic tremors shivered through the deck plating beneath their feet. The crew exchanged uneasy glances. Science and procedure had given way to something raw and urgent. Mara stepped closer to the holo display. A three-dimensional grid of dark space materialized, centered on a tiny point of flickering white light. "Signal origin is here," she said, tracing her fingertip through the air. "That nebula cluster NGC 394, the Ghost's Veil, uncharted in any recent logs." Chief Engineer Soren Kell stepped forward, peering at the projection. "NGC 394 is mostly dismissed as a rich gas cloud dangerous to traverse. Ion storms, erratic magnetic fields. Nobody bothers to map it in detail, which makes it perfect for something to hide," Mara replied. She turned to Vance. "Set a course. We'll approach at flank speed, but maintain sensor cloak. I don't want to tip our hand if whatever sent that signal is hostile." "Aye, Captain," Vance replied, his fingers already recalibrating the astrogation arrays. As the Artemis powered toward NGC 394, Mara retreated to her private quarters to inspect the transmission's raw data. She sat at her desk, the holo keypads flickering beneath her fingers, and let the voices wash over her again. They were layered literal echoes across time like whispers from every corner of the galaxy, pressed into one agonized broadcast. But one haunting refrain pulsed beneath them all. "They come soon." A shiver traced down her spine. Vast and unspecific, the warning carried an inescapable weight. On the wall beside her, a digital plaque listed her accolades: Explorers, Commendation, 2-time Malheur Advanced Medal, Diplomatic Service Ribbon. And now, she realized, the Artemis had been thrust into the unknown frontier of first contact only this time. No friendly ambassador awaited them. By the time the nebula's emerald tendrils filled the bridge view screen, hours had passed. The swirling gas danced in slow eddies, illuminated by distant stars that filtered through the vapor like sunlight in murky water. Navigator Kendra Voss adjusted the shield's resonance to compensate for the nebula's ionic interference. "Shield integrity holding at 92%, she reported, brow furrowed. "But we're losing comm links with command and the nearest supply outpost. Maintain channel 3 for internal comms only," Mara said. "We don't need any distractions." She studied the readings on her tactical display. Fluctuating gravimetric spikes indicated dozens of large masses drifting within the cloud. Field scans couldn't penetrate the densest regions. Only short-range probes could map the interior. Lieutenant Vance stood and addressed the bridge. "I recommend a probe launch. We'll need to get a look inside the nebula before risking the hull." "Do it," Mara nodded. "And have them keep the probes on stealth transmission, no returning to base." Until we have full spectral data. 2 minutes later, the probe carriers spun off like metal spiders, their scanning arrays humming as they dove into the gaseous murk. The crew leaned forward as the first mapping loops came back, swirling currents of charged particles, pockets of crystalline ice, and something else. A hulking shape too angular to be a natural formation lay partially obscured in the nebula's depths. Unidentified structure, Voss said, pointing to the display, roughly the size of a frigate. Hull breaches appear along its starboard side. Mara's heart lifted. On life signs scan, she ordered. Negative, too many ion fluctuations. But I'm picking up a faint subspace reflection. Could be the source of the distress beacon. Prepare the forward shuttle, Mara said, rising. We're going. Into the assault shuttle spearpoint shuddered as it broke through the nebula's outer sheath. Mara sat strapped into the pilot's seat, visor down, heart hammering. Beside her, Vance double-checked the pulse photon rifle at his side. Behind them, 2 Marines in toxic environment suits monitored their sensors. I'm reading hull integrity at 37%, Vance reported. Life support amber, radiation at 23 rads. Mara nodded. Dock at that breach on the starboard corridor. Suit up for hazardous materials and potential biothreats. And remember, rescue mission only. No unauthorized explorations. The shuttle nudged against the wreck's jagged metal lip, clamps latching with a metallic groan. They opened the hatch into darkness. Inside, the corridor stretched away in an eerie luminescence. Floor panels shattered, rails buckled, walls smeared with an unknown phosphorescent ooze. Every step Mara took echoed unnaturally. She keyed her comm. Bridge, this is Duval. We're inside the wreck. No life signs yet, but we're proceeding to investigate the source of the distress call. Stand by for updates. A distant cough of static was her only reply. Mara raised her rifle's light. The beam swept across fragments of consoles, scattered datapads, and bodies. Dozens of humanoid forms lay in twisted repose, suits ripped, flesh scorched. Some faces were contorted in terror, others blank as if the occupants fled in panic and never returned. She swallowed hard. Vance, bioscan. Are they alive? Vance crouched beside a fallen figure, waving the scanner's probe over its neck. Negative heart rate, but tissue still warm. No decomposition. This happened hours ago. Mara's breath caught. Hours ago. The beacon had been broadcasting longer than that. A sudden, piercing alarm cut through their comms. The corridor lights snapped from green to red. Radiation spike. One of the Marines shouted. His hand went to his suit's readout. 50 rads and rising. Fall back, Mara yelled, spinning around as the corridor ahead flickered with a violet glow. Vance grabbed her arm. We need to get back to the shuttle now. But before they could retreat, a low hum resonated through the hull. The phosphorescent ooze along the walls began to writhe, pooling toward the center of the corridor. Shapes materialized within, its depths elongated limbs, darting heads, and eyes glowing like embers in the gloom. They were coming alive. Move, Mara bellowed, firing into the advancing forms. Pulses of energy tore through the ooze creatures, but they splashed aside like water, reforming moments later with malice in their gaze. Grenade in hand, Vance hurled an EMP charge. It detonated with a blinding flare, and the creatures convulsed, shedding their oozy forms. In the clearing, Mara glimpsed something unfamiliar. A transponder, embedded in the bulkhead, flickering with the same coded symbols as their distress beacon. This is it, Mara said. That's our signal source. She rushed forward, pried the device free and felt the corridor shudder as something stirred deeper within the wreck. A distant echo rolled down the hallway, like the growl of a beast awakened from an ancient slumber. Mara gripped the device, voice steady. This is Captain Duval of the UESV Artemis. We've secured the beacon. Returning to the shuttle for extraction. Behind her, the ooze creatures frothed, their red eyes focused on her like predators sensing fresh prey. Vance fired again, backing her toward the hatch. Let's go, Mara ordered. Now. They sprinted down the corridor as the wreck convulsed around them. Above, the nebula's dying light flickered through the hull breach, an otherworldly strobe that illuminated their flight back to the shuttle. As the spear points hatch sealed and the engines roared to life, Mara dared a glance back at the wreck. The corridor lights had gone dark, but at its heart, the device still pulsed once more. They come soon. Mara pressed her forehead against the viewport, determination hardening in her eyes. Whatever had sent that signal and whatever lurked within NGC 394 was only the beginning. The galaxy itself might soon tremble at what had been unleashed. The interior of the wrecked ship was colder than the void outside. Its corridors, half frozen in time, were lined with jagged metal ribs that caught the spear point's harsh spotlights and threw back warped reflections like broken memories. Captain Duval's boots clanged against the grated flooring as she led the way, pulse rifle at the ready. Behind her, Lieutenant Vance swept his own weapon in careful arcs, while Marine Corporal Yasmin Ortega and Specialist Theo Park covered. Their flanks, Dr. Esha Ram, the Artemis's xenobiologist, followed close behind. Her portable scanner humming softly, radiations peaked. Vance warned, glancing at his suit's readout. 50 rads and climbing. Just keep moving, Mara replied, voice low but steady. We only need to find the source of that beacon and get out. They advanced down a long span of corridor, walls slick with the same phosphorescent ooze they'd seen before. The slime drifted in slow rivulets toward a massive bulkhead etched with an unfamiliar symbol, a stylized spiral surrounding 3 concentric circles. Whatever civilization had built this vessel had used the spiral as its emblem, but none of the database matches returned a single result. Looks like an access panel, Ortega observed, wiping goo from her gauntlet. Park stepped forward, extracting. A multi-tool, I'll pry it open. Give me a second. Sparks flickered as the tool worked at rusty seams. The rest of the team formed a semicircle. Rifles trained at the darkness beyond. Esha trained her scanner on the ooze. Biochemistries. Beyond anything I've cataloged. Microstructure shows rapid cellular regeneration and an electromagnetic resonance. Almost like it's alive, or at least driven by some latent AI. Before Mara could respond, the panel groaned open. Beyond lay a spherical chamber, its walls lined with half-buried tendrils of circuitry, and at its center, perched atop a broken console, a crystalline cube pulsed with violet light. Tendrils of the same ooze wrapped around its facets, feeding into ports where data jacks once protruded. That has to be it, Duval whispered, stepping forward. But Vance grabbed her arm. Hold on, he cautioned. Sensors are going crazy. His gauntlet beeped in staccato rhythm. EM interference off the charts, and life signs, but not good life signs. He pointed to the scanner's readout. Multiple small, erratic pulses flickered across the display short, violent bursts that suggested movement. Something was moving in the darkness beyond the chamber's threshold. They're coming, Marion. The Marine's second in command said, voice taut. On cue, a high-pitched rattling hiss echoed through the corridor behind them. The beam of Ortega's rifle flicked round the chamber's entrance, illuminating shapes that slithered across the floor like living shadows. They looked like the corpses they had seen upstairs, elongated limbs, charred scales, but these moved with horrifying speed, jerking and twitching toward the away team. Grenade. Vance bellowed, tossing an M charge into the chamber. The device exploded in a flash of blue-white light, sending arcs of electricity dancing along the walls. The creatures convulsed, bodies rupturing as the energy tore through their semi-organic forms, yet several staggered to their feet, more malformed than before, eyes glowing a deeper red, limbs extending into razor-sharp spines. They surged forward. Fall back, Mara shouted. The team retreated through the bulkhead, sealing the chamber behind them just as the creature's claws scraped the rim, panting. Mara slumped against the bulkhead. Damn, they're adaptive. Esha's eyes were wide. I've never seen anything like it. Their biomass reconfigures itself to external stimuli, physical or electrical. It's a defense mechanism, but optimized for offense. Vance kicked at the sealed chamber door. Then we can't just blast them, we need to starve them of whatever's animating them. That crystal back there, it's their power source. Mara's gaze snapped back to the glowing cube. Then we shut it down. Soren told me he could jury-rig an EMP burst strong enough to overload that prism. But we'll need time and cover. The corridor shuddered as a distant roar echoed through the ship. heavy footsteps, accompanied by groans that resonated through steel. The Marines trained their rifles down the passage, spotting at least 3 colossal forms lumbering toward them, warped amalgams of metal plating and skeletal limbs, each as tall as Mara herself. Ortega steadied her pulse rifle. "Looks like the big ones are awake too." Park sighed. "Marines, take point. Cover us while we set charges." Ortega and Marion moved forward, their disciplined fire holding the Titans at bay as Vance and Park planted electromagnetic pulse charges at strategic nodes along the corridor walls. Esha hurried to Mara's side. "Captain, the prism's output is cyclical. We have about 40 seconds before it recharges, then those creatures will be unstoppable." She pressed a datapad to her suit, analyzing the cube's pulse rhythm in real time. 40 seconds, Mara murmured. She checked her own rifle's charge. "Go loud on my mark. Take no prisoners," at Vance's signal. Park triggered the EMP sequencer, and the charges lit up with a humming blue glow. The Titans surged forward, steel limbs smashing the corridor, electric sparks cascading from ruptured panels. As they breached the halfway point, Mara gave the order, "Now." 2 Marines detonated fragmentation grenades down the corridor while Vance hit the igniters. In an instant, the charges unleashed a burst of crippling energy. A shockwave rippled through the wreck, and the prismatic cube went dark, its violet glow extinguished in a breath. A deathly silence followed, broken only by the Marines' heavy breathing. In the chamber beyond, the creatures collapsed, flesh and metal inert once more. Mara holstered her rifle. "Well done. Let's move." Beyond the prism room lay a spiral staircase descending into uncharted depths. The walls here were thick with reinforced alloys, hardly an easy passage. Esha scanned the structure. "This looks like it led to the engine core and possibly to a deeper, secured compartment, which is exactly where we need to go," Mara said. She signaled for the extraction shuttle. "Get ready, Artemis. We've got the beacon, but we're not pulling out until we know what or who that beacon belonged to." As the away team steeled themselves for the descent, a final transmission crackled through Mara's suit comlink. It wasn't the distorted voice of the beacon. It was a single, stark message in a tongue she understood all too well. "Intruders detected. Protocol Omega initiated." The words cut through her like a blade. The silence that followed was worse than any roar of monsters. In that moment, Captain Mara Duval realized they had not rescued the lost. They had trespassed into a graveyard of nightmares, and something down below was coming alive once more, drawn by their presence. The spiral staircase curled downward into the bowels of the vessel, its metal treads slick with that same phosphorescent ooze. Each step Mara took echoed in the narrow shaft, mixing with the distant hum of dying engines and the crackle of residual power surges. Behind her, the away team Vance, Ortega, Park, and Dr. Esha Ram followed in single file, rifles and scanners at the ready. The air grew colder, heavier with ozone and something fouler, the scent of decay and old blood. At the bottom of the stairs lay a broad corridor, cut through dense bulkheads that trembled with each pulse of the ship's unstable core. Sparks danced from exposed conduits, illuminating the walls in jagged patterns of orange and red. Ahead, a sealed blast door towered almost 10 meters high, its control panel flickering with a dying red readout. "Access denied. Protocol Omega engaged." Mara peered at the panel. "Protocol Omega," she murmured, recalling the warning in her comms. "Self-defense lockdown, and maybe more." She knelt to examine the interface. "There's an override jack if Soren's modular decryptor can splice into it. We might open the door." Park knelt beside her, laying out the toolkit. "Give me a minute. The jack's non-standard, but I can hotwire a bypass." Energy from the failing core crackled up his sleeve as he connected wires. Teeth gritted against the electrical sting. The panel's red glow blinked faster, then shifted to yellow. "Override in progress." "Time's short," Mara called. "Get it open." With a final pulse, the panel hissed and the door's hydraulics groaned. The slabs parted, revealing Engineering Central, a vast chamber dominated by a towering mass of conduits and machinery, all converging on a colossal reactor core suspended in midair by magnetic fields. Tendrils of the violet crystal, now inert, and fractured still dripped viscous ooze into containment troughs below. But even without its primal glow, the core thrummed with energy, as though turned inside out. Unreal scale, Ortega breathed, advancing under cover of Park's rifle. "This is bigger than any cruiser reactor," Esch's scanner chirped. "Biological signatures weak, but present. Something's alive in here, and they're bound to that core." She tapped at the datapad. "I'm detecting a network of neural links, organic conduits intertwined with nanofiber cables. This vessel harnessed living creatures as part of its power matrix." Mara's jaw clenched. So those humanoids, they weren't just victims. They were engines. Below them, the central platform creaked. A low moan rippled through the grate flooring. In the muddy depths of the containment troughs, shapes shifted, arms pushing through the sludge as dozens of bodies, glazed with ooze and fused to cable-like tendrils, clawed for freedom. "They're waking," Park whispered, firing down at the emerging forms. Energy rounds exploded against the murk. Limbs fell away in showers of mutagenic fluid and wire, but more shapes loomed in the gloom. Each corpse tangled in its own equipment, eyes flickering with residual life. "Get back," Mara ordered, pulling Vance and the Marines onto an elevated catwalk. But before they could clear the platform, the reactor's low hum warped into a keening wail. The violet fragments embedded in the core suddenly flared tiny, incandescent sparks racing through the ooze like blood through veins. The entire chamber vibrated. "Stop them," Esha yelled. "If that core reignites, if the prism fragments resonate again, it'll reboot the gate." She tapped furiously at her scanner. "We can't let that happen." Mara turned to Park. "Can you plant another EMP stronger, targeted at that reactor field?" Park's eyes were grim. "I might be able to overload the containment fields, but we'll have one shot." "Do it," she said. "Everyone else, cover fire." As Park rigged the EMP node to the reactor's external field emitters, the humanoid engines, now partly freed, rose from the trough's towering shapes swaddled in wires and slime. Their heads were elongated, hinged by metal clamps. Their mouths split open in silent screams as they lunged upward. Marines opened fire, burst pistols tearing through living circuitry. Vance charged a fragmentation grenade, hurling it into the massive writhing forms. The explosion shredded wires and flesh alike, knocking debris onto the catwalk, but more abominations surged through the gaps in the railings. "Now, Park!" Mara shouted, firing at a creature that snapped at Esha's leg. Park triggered the EMP. A deafening crack filled the chamber as arcs of purple electricity lanced out, enveloping the reactor core and the crystalline shards entwined within. The magnetic field flickered, then collapsed with a thunderous boom. The core's suspension rails ground against the floor, and the violet ooze boiled and spat. In the moments that followed, all sounds seemed to freeze. Then the EMP pulse thundered back, rippling through the engines in a wave of disruptive force. The abominations convulsed violently, their neon veins dimming as the living circuitry shorted out. One by one, they collapsed, inert once more. The chamber fell into oppressive silence. Smoke curled from Park's EMP node. The containment troughs dripped acid-tinged slime into glowing fractures. In the floor, above, the catwalk groaned as they steadied themselves. Mara exhaled, voice tight. "Is it done?" Park nodded, wiping sweat from his brow. "The pulse fried most active circuits. That core is inert, as are the engines." Esha stepped forward, scanning the ruined prism fragments. "The gate can't recharge now, but the damage to this vessel is irreversible." She laid a hand on a shattered shard. It was feeding on living tissue, learning from it. The whole design was a weapon. Mara felt a cold dread sink in. "We did what we came for, we stopped it. But there's still that transmission. Protocol Omega initiated. Whatever that means, we triggered it." Below them, the deck plates shuddered again. In the reactor's quiet hum, a second vibration, distant yet unmistakable, rippled outward. A metallic groan rolled through the corridors, and the lights dimmed to emergency red. Vance checked his console. Multiple breaches opening throughout the ship. Bulkheads are unlatching, pressure differentials dropping. It's venting atmosphere into space. Ortega's voice trembled. "We're going to be sucked out if we don't move now." Mara signaled retreat. "Back to the shuttle fast. We'll regroup on the Artemis and decide our next move. They sprinted toward the hatch, boots sliding on the oily catwalk. Behind them, the reactor room erupted in a cascade of sparks as the core's final self-destruct sequence triggered. The massive containment fields flickered, energy cascaded through the conduits, and the violet prism shards imploded in a silent flash that lit the chamber in ghostly light. Mara lunged through the hatch as doors slammed shut behind them. The corridor shuddered violently, then cracked open as atmosphere hissed into the void. They tumbled onto the deck, gasping as the pressure equalized. Emergency doors clanged shut around them, isolating the decompressed section. Panting, Mara wiped grime from her visor. Everybody alive, Ortega flexed her fingers. Just about. But that ship, it's going down. Park checked his suit. Hull breach forward. We've got minutes before the whole section tears apart. Mara looked back toward the sealed blast door. The beacon's gone silent. That cube, it was the heart. With it destroyed, no more signal. She turned to her team. Let's get back to the Artemis. We've disrupted Omega, but we've only scratched the surface of what this vessel was and who built it. The galaxy needs to know. Let's move. As they vanished into the twisting corridors, the reactor room's final implosion echoed through the wreck, a death knell in the dark, and deep within the ship's core, a faint pulse persisted, as though something vast and patient had only just stirred. The Artemis's engines shuddered as they disengaged the gravity tethers to the wreck. Captain Mara Duval stared at the receding hulk on the main viewer. Its corridors had gone silent, its reactor void of heartbeat. Round the ship, the nebulas, swirling greens and purples, looked deceptively serene, an ocean of mist hiding the graveyard beneath. Status report, Mara ordered, voice steady but terse. Chief Engineer Soren Kell's gauntlet display flickered as he surveyed the ship's systems. Secondary hull breach patched. Life support normals stabilizing. We've vented most of the radiation carried on our suits into the void, though we'll need a full decan on the decks before re-entry to inhabited space. Lieutenant Rue Vance spoke from the tactical console. Beacon source secured. The prism fragments have been confirmed incinerated by thermal re-entry. No residual subspace transmissions detected. Mara exhaled, but her relief was tempered by the questions still gnawing at her. Good. Begin medical scans for the team and patch me through to Admiral Harrow in Galactic Council Command. As the Artemis slid away from NGC 394, its wireless amplifier hummed to life. The Council's emblem filled the comm link, a carved stone dais surmounted by 3 swirling vortices. Admiral Helena Harrow appeared, her silver hair coiled in a perfect knot. Behind her, the chamber's holomap of the galaxy glowed with pinned distress signals from every quadrant. Captain Duval, Harrow's voice was grave. Report. Mara squared her shoulders. Admiral, we located the source of the distress call in NGC 394 aboard an unregistered vessel hull design, unknown to any archive. The beacon was powered by a crystalline prism network embedded in an organic mechanical reactor. That network opened, or threatened to open, a gate to something called the End Station. We shut it down, destroyed the prism fragments, and neutralized all hostile biomass on board. A silence followed. In Harrow's eyes, duty and concern. Ward, the End Station, that's myth archive entries say it was a prison world, locked away beyond the rim over 50 millennia ago. It's never been accessed. Mara tapped her display and brought up the vessel's recovered logs. Fragmented voice recordings, corrupted by time and energy surges, lined the transcript in jagged columns. Myth or not, these logs speak of a cosmic prison housing an entity or multiple entities of unimaginable power. The prism array was designed to breach that prison, to weaponize its inhabitants against the galaxy. Harrow's eyes narrowed, a weapon capable of unleashing horrors across dozens of star systems. She rested a hand on the dais. Enemies of the Council have sought forbidden knowledge before, but nothing on this scale. We must reconvene the Security Tribunal immediately. Understood. Admiral, but we'll need evidence. Mara's gaze flicked to the recovered transponder device against her console. I've secured the last remaining data core from the wreck. It contains schematic overlays of the gate's control systems and coordinates. Coordinates. Harrow's tone sharpened. Where does it lead? Mara brought up a holostar map. A dot hovered at the fringe of charted space, beyond the Nexus belt and past the rimward border of the Corellan expanse. Here, she said, fingers tracing the point, the archives omit this region entirely. It's outside exploratory mandates. Harrow frowned. There are rumors of pirate havens past the expanse. Other ships have gone missing there. She leaned closer. If that dot marks the end station gate, then the Council's historians were right and wrong. The prison still exists, or did. Before you destroyed the vessel's reactor, Mara nodded. We must verify its status and seal it permanently. She felt her crew's tension on the bridge, Esha scanning the data core, Vance reviewing tactical simulations, Ortega and Park cleaning and rearming for whatever lay ahead. I request a strike team Council Marines, forensic analysts, and the best xenobiologists, if we're to face whatever was locked away. We need all the expertise we can muster. Behind Harrow's visage, the holomap glowed ominously as new signals blinked across the outer rim. Send me the full transmission logs and coordinates. I'll authorize your strike team. But Captain, be prepared for opposition. There are factions within the Council who still believe the end station's contents could be a bargaining chip or worse, a weapon against our enemies. Mara's jaw tightened. I'll secure the data. We'll move under Council banner, but we'll move swiftly. Before Harrow could reply, the comlink stuttered and went dark. The bridge lights dimmed for a heartbeat as auxiliary power flickered. Report. Mara barked. Sensors pulsed an alert. An incoming subspace message. Scrambled under layers of encryption far newer than the ship's systems could decode. But one fragment peeked through, a single word, trailing in static yet unmistakable: intruders. The word halted the Artemis's hum. A second message followed. This one in the Council's own subspace channels, forged with perfect mimetic. Keys, Siegecraft has arrived. Surrender before further casualties. Mara's blood ran cold. Siegecraft, the Council's elite suppression fleet, authorized only in the gravest of emergencies. Mara scanned her tactical feed. 2 cruisers, materializing at the edge of sensor range, weapons bristling. By the void, Vance muttered. They're here to stop us. Bridge, red alert. Mara's command echoed. Shields to full. Weapons hot. Evasive thrusters at standby. And reroute all power to subspace decoders. We need to know who sent that. Ortega punched at the encryption panel. This is high-grade obfuscation. Could be pirate lords. Could be Council hardliners. Park sighed, loading his rifle. Great, we fought horrors, only to get shot by our own side. Mara exhaled, steeling herself. Prepare countermeasures and hail them. Open a secure comm. Artemis to Siegecraft Command. This is Captain Mara Duval of the Artemis. Under Council Directive 72 Beta. Identify yourselves and clarify your orders. As Ortega worked, Mara moved to the viewer. The 2 cruisers drifted into focus. Their hulls bristled with anti-ship artillery. Their bridge domes sporting the Siegecraft emblem, a stylized fist crushing a star. They were waiting. On the calm display, a cold face appeared. Commodore Ulrich. Fenn, Siegecraft's commanding officer, his features gaunt and scarred. His voice crackled with icy authority. Captain Duval, you are in violation of standing directives. You have no authorization for lethal actions beyond Sector C limits. Stand down and prepare to surrender all recovered materials. Mara squared her shoulders. Commodore, you lack the full context. I'm carrying evidence of a prison breach, coordinates to the end station gate. These data are a matter of galactic security. Fenn cut her off. Silence. You've exceeded your remit. This vessel is under martial sanction. Withdraw your crew. Stand down. Mara's knuckles whitened on the console. Commodore, if you fire on us, orders stand, Fenn replied. He turned, addressing unseen officers. Lock on primary reactor. Contact ballistic support. Executing Directive Freddy Echo in 5 minutes. Mara's heart pounded. Directive Freddy Echo, the code for field termination of unauthorized vessels. A tactical strike on the Artemis meant certain destruction. Brace for impact, she whispered. Then she looked to her crew. You heard them. Options. Vance's jaw set. We can't just comply. We lose everything: evidence, lives, any chance to stop the end station. Esh's voice trembled. If Siegecraft intercepts those data, they may seal off the region, barricade the end station forever. The horrors inside could be left to fester, or worse, exploited. Mara met their eyes. Then we make our stand. Helm, maintain this vector but drop out of standard subspace frequencies. Weapons, target their primary thrusters. Marines, prepare. Magnetic boarding spikes. Ortega hesitated. Captain, that's an act of piracy. Mara's decision was resolute. It's an act of survival. If we lose these coordinates, the galaxy will never know. And if we can't destroy the gate ourselves, then the horrors await the next unsuspecting ship. A tense minute passed as the Artemis activated stealth decoy drones and masked its signature. Fenn's cruisers began charging plasma cannons. Now, Mara shouted, from hidden launch bays. The electromagnetic harpoons streaked toward the cruisers, embedding in their hulls with searing impacts. Explosions rocked their exteriors as the Artemis veered off axis and unleashed a barrage of plasma bolts at their thrusters. The duel had begun. Above the swirling nebula and the silent wreck, two ships danced in lethal choreography. Mara felt the weight of every life aboard the Artemis and the fate of billions beyond. In the glow of streaking ion blasts and frantic console readouts, Captain Mara Duval knew this was no longer just a rescue mission. It was a battle for truth itself against nightmares redeemed and allies turned foes. And deep in the void, unseen forces stirred, sensing the upheaval. The end station gate, somewhere beyond the rim, began to pulse faintly on Mara's holomappets, colors shifting like a heartbeat. The captain gripped her console, lips set. So be it. We fight for the galaxy's sake. The Artemis surged into the fray, its crew united by one inescapable truth. The distress signal had been only the beginning. What had arrived in response would horrify the entire galaxy, and they would stand against it, or die trying.